Greetings, everyone. This is Rock and Roll Spot Connection with my review of the 2020 reboot of The Grudge, which is obviously a remake, reboot of the, more a reboot of the American version, which was a remake of the Japanese horror movie Ju-On, The Grudge. The basic plot boils down to a police officer starts investigating a string of potentially related deaths in the town she's recently moved into, and seeing some weird shit shortly as she delves deeper into the case. I thought it was very well made. It makes great use of atmosphere, scares, sound, and lack thereof at some points. To really create a nearly palpable feeling of dread. Anywho, so the cast of note, we've got Andrea Riceborough as Detective Muldoon. She's a recently widowed police detective and mother, newly assigned as Detective Goodman's partner, having just moved to a small town in Pennsylvania. We got Damian Bachir as Detective Goodman, police detective, newly partnered with Detective Muldoon, still grieving the loss of his mother, investigated the Landers family case, but he never actually entered the house the deaths took place in. Next up, we've got John Cho as Peter Spencer, realtor who, with his newly pregnant wife, is trying to sell the Landers house. Betty Gilpin as Nina Spencer, also a realtor like her husband, and pregnant, not about to give birth any day. But on a newly pregnant is probably putting it a little. Is probably being a little. Is probably understating things. I'd say she's probably at least a few months along, or more than. I would say actually more than a few months along, and. But yeah, she actually gets a lot of. She gets some really good characterization. Yeah, there's enough. We learn enough about her to make her to actually make her an interesting B tier supporting character. Lynn Shay as Faith Matheson. She's an older woman suffering from an undefined terminal illness who lives in the Landers house after the Landers family dies. Excuse me. Next up, we've got Frankie Faison as William Matheson, Faith's husband of nearly 50 years. Really just wants to see an end to his wife's suffering. Jackie Weaver as Lorna Moody, who's an assisted suicide advocate, contacted by William Matheson. She describes herself as being a positive presence. William Sadler as Detective Wilson, who's Detective Goodman's former partner, became obsessed with the Landers family deaths and house to a rather dangerous degree. And finally, Tara Westwood as Fiona Landers, wife and mother who, as of the beginning of the movie, has recently returned from Japan, where she saw some kind of terrifying things shortly before leaving. So, the movie itself, we begin with introducing we are introduced to Fiona. She is abruptly leaving her job in Japan. It's I want to say it seemed to be a live-in caregiving job, but it was never. I don't recall it being too clearly defined. But apparently she had agreed to stay longer initially, but something about the house she had to leave right then. And as she's leaving, she sees a garbage bag seeming to breathe, inflate and deflate like a lung, and then a hand reaches out from another garbage bag and grabs her, which, though she basically snapped herself out of it and realizes she was just seeing things. Or was she? Anyway, she makes it home, reunited with her family, and they're all happy to see one another. Then we fast forward 2 years to Detective Muldoon basically putting her life back together after the death of her husband a few months previously. She's having to help her son out with the fact that he's starting a new school, and they both miss his dad, who we learn died of cancer. And she starts her job at the police department as she's a police detective. She's been partnered up with Detective Goodman. And early on in their time as partners, they're called about a car discovered in the woods off an access road that was only recently reopened. Inside the car, they find a badly decomposed corpse, obviously been there for months. Further investigation of the car revealed directions to the house that the Landers family lived in. And it's implied this is another one of those. Of course, Detective Muldoon has no idea what those are, and so she begins asking. Detective Goodman does try to brush it aside, but yeah, it doesn't really work too well. This leads to Muldoon beginning to investigate the house, including and so we basically are shown a handful of different stories relating to the house within a 2-year period. And then as she's as she's looking into all of this, she begins having terrifying visions of the Landers family. So the investigations that what Muldoon's looking into is, first off, of course, the Landers family, whose deaths were the first in the house after Fiona returned abruptly from her job in Japan. Then we got Peter and Nina Spencer, the realtors trying to sell that Landers house, and what happens to them. Basically, as it's explained early on, the curse, the grudge, as it were, will start in a location, and anyone that enters that location gets ensnared by it, and then they can just they leave and they take it with them, but it also stays in the one location. Then you got Faith and William Matheson, the residents of the house after the deaths of the Landers family. This also includes Lorna Moody, whose the discovery of whose body is kind of the catalyst for Muldoon looking into all of this. And finally, there's Detective Wilson, who is Detective Goodman's former partner. He kind of became obsessed with the case and recorded notes about it, copious amounts of notes. And we do see how most of these arcs end before Muldoon opts to actually do something about things. So the movie's ups and downs. It's very well made. I was really impressed. The filmmakers made great use of atmosphere, background especially. I mean, so many points where you catch just off the background and see, oh, the ghost is there. As I mentioned, sound and lack thereof, and of course scares. Great casting as well as characterizations. Then there's an excellent potential nod, if not straight up link, to the original Ju-On. During, as part of the Detective Wilson's investigation, he mentions that he discovered how in Japan there had been a killing like this, and so it was looked into, and it turns out that, and he name drops a detective that was in the original Ju-On. But it turns out that the house that the killings happened in is the same house that Fiona Landers worked in. The only real downside I could see the movie was that there are some issues with low lighting levels in the movie. I know it's a horror movie, and low lighting levels are a normal thing, but it felt detrimental in a lot of cases, in a few, well, not a lot, but a few points. It's like you could turn the lighting up just a hair. But yeah, that's really all I can think to say bad about the movie, because there's not that much wrong with it. It's not a perfect film by far, but it does the job. So overall opinion, it's a solid horror movie with a good cast, script, atmosphere, well done scares. If you're a horror fan, it's definitely worth a watch, I would say. As for the rating, I honestly could not justify giving this a 4 out of 5, as much as I did enjoy it. But a 3 would have been an insult. So I got to go with 3.5. 3.5 out of 5 for this one. Yeah, that's it for now. As always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Links to my Facebook, Twitter, Patreon, and PayPal can be found in the description box down below. This is Rock Roll Spock signing off, saying, live long and rock hard.